The capsule landed exactly on target. No fire, no explosion, no distress call. When the recovery team opened the hatch, all 3 cosmonauts were dead. Sitting in their seats, looking almost like they were asleep, they are still, to this day, the only human beings confirmed to have died in the vacuum of space. This is the story of how a routine, triumphant mission ended in total silence, and how a single valve, the size of a fist, was enough to kill an entire crew. June 6, 1971. Soyuz 11 launched from Baikonur Cosmodrome, carrying 3 Soviet cosmonauts, Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsayev. Their target was Salyut 1, humanity's first space station, only recently placed in orbit. They weren't the original crew. The mission's first choice of cosmonauts was pulled just days before launch, after a doctor spotted a possible medical issue in one of them. Dobrovolsky, Volkov, and Patsayev were the backup team. They trained together for a fraction of the time the original crew had. They flew anyway. They docked with Salyut 1 the next day. For 23 days, they lived and worked aboard it. They ran biological experiments. They took astronomical observations. They set a new endurance record for time spent continuously in space. Back on Earth, the mission was already being treated as a historic success. On June 29th, they said goodbye to the station and climbed back into their Soyuz descent capsule for the trip home. Re-entry looked routine. Ground control tracked their descent normally. Then, communication went quiet. Not with alarm, just silence at a point in the sequence when the crew should have been talking. The capsule continued its automated descent. It deployed its parachute. It fired its landing engines. It touched down in Kazakhstan, precisely where it was supposed to. From the outside, everything about the landing looked completely normal. The recovery team opened the hatch expecting to greet 3 national heroes. Instead, they found 3 men who were already gone. Here's what the investigation pieced together. As the descent module separated from the rest of the spacecraft, a routine, explosive bolt separation performed on every single re-entry. The shock of that separation was harder than engineers expected. Inside the capsule was a small valve. Its job was to equalize cabin pressure with the outside air, but only once the capsule was low enough, just a few kilometers above the ground, for that to be safe. The jolt of separation knocked that valve open early, not near the ground, at an altitude of 168 kilometers, in the vacuum of space. The cabin's air began escaping immediately, not violently, not with a bang, just a fast, continuous rush of pressure draining into nothing. Within seconds, the air inside the capsule was thinning toward vacuum. The crew wasn't wearing pressure suits. After the Soyuz 1 disaster 4 years earlier, engineers had redesigned the capsule to carry a 3rd seat. To fit that seat, they removed the spacesuits the previous 2-person crews had worn. It was treated as an acceptable trade-off. Soyuz 11 was the mission that proved it wasn't. Without a suit, there was nothing left to protect them once the cabin itself failed. According to Soviet accounts, one of the crew, believed to be Patsayev, realized what was happening and tried to find and close the valve by hand. In a cramped capsule, with only a small window of useful consciousness left, he couldn't locate it in time. Telemetry later showed their heart rate spiking, then falling. Investigators estimated the crew lost consciousness within under a minute. Full loss of cabin pressure took a little longer. But by then, it no longer mattered. There was no scream over the radio, no last message. Just the silence ground control had already noticed, now explained. The state investigation confirmed the cause. A single faulty valve, triggered by a separation shock no one had accounted for, in a cabin with no suits to buy the crew any extra time. The response was immediate and total. The Soviet Union grounded human spaceflight for more than 2 years while engineers redesigned the Soyuz spacecraft. The valve was relocated and redesigned. Cabin volume was reduced to fit suits back in. And from that mission onward, every cosmonaut has worn a pressure suit during launch and landing. No exceptions, no matter how much space or weight it costs. That single design decision made years earlier to save room for a third seat is the reason 3 men who had just set a spaceflight endurance record never made it home to celebrate it. What makes Soyuz 11 different from almost every other disaster in this genre is the quiet. There was no explosion to see, no structural failure to point to. Just a small valve, a design assumption that didn't hold, and a silence that told mission control everything had gone wrong before anyone on the ground even knew why. The cosmonauts were given a full state funeral. Their ashes were placed in the Kremlin wall, and the mission that should be remembered purely as a triumph, the first crew to live aboard a space station, is remembered instead for what happened in the final minutes of the trip home. Somewhere in that 23-day record, and the seconds it took to undo it, is the reminder this channel keeps coming back to. In space, survival often comes down to margins nobody thought to question until it was too late. If you want more of these, subscribe. And if you got thoughts on what you'd have done in that cabin, with seconds left and a valve you couldn't find, I'd genuinely like to hear it in the comments below.